humbly come before you. Dear Holy God, as we humbly come before your throne of grace today, thank you for this blessed Sabbath day, where we can all worship you and give you thanks and praise for bringing us through another week. Please be with us now, Lord, as we do a presentation, that it'll be what you want it to be. And help me, Lord, to present it in a way that will make other people understand it all. So please bless the rest of our morning now, Lord, and thank you. For we give you thanks and praise in and through our beloved Saviour, always to your great honor and glory. Amen. Okay, so the Sabbath presentation today is going to be, oh, it's not moving now. Oh gosh, hurry on. It's going to be about the part 3. So this is the final part of the Federalist Society. So we're just going to be doing the last slides of this. And I hope that you remember the things that we discussed in the previous presentation. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to listen to a YouTube presentation that Ronald Reagan did that I'm going to discuss about and why I'm going to be playing this today. So I'm just going to play the first few bits, and I just want you to let me know if you can hear it. To go back here.
Well, you've done that.
Did people hear that?
Yes.
Good, right, I'll carry on play. Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you. Well, I'm delighted to have this opportunity to be with you today. Actually, I was thinking on the way over that this is the second gathering of attorneys I've addressed in the last few months. When I spoke to the American Bar Association a short time ago, I said how disappointed I was that the White House counsel wouldn't let me accept the honorarium. I was really looking forward to the first time I ever talked to a group of lawyers and came home with the fee. Well, I'm told there won't be any honorarium this morning either. But you know, that's not quite right either, because there will be honorariums today, except this time it's the speaker who's going to be handing them out. By that, I just wanted to be here today to say how grateful I am to all of you, to each one of you. All of you are on the front line. Each one of you holds one of the toughest jobs there is in law enforcement. You know, sometimes when I've spoken to police officers, I've reminded them to be cautious about drawing too many conclusions based on their daily work, to remember that too often they only see their fellow citizens when they've committed a crime or been victimized by one, when they're hurting or in trouble. It's easy to forget the people they don't see every day, that great majority of Americans who are law-abiding citizens and who are proud of those in law enforcement, grateful to them and anxious to give them their full support. Well, not only do you have to deal with the criminals and their victims every day, you also have to deal with judges and juries and other lawyers, and all of that, I know, demands the utmost in professional skill and dedication from each one of you. I'm sure there are moments of enormous frustration, and I'm sure there are times when you feel unappreciated. But I hope that such moments in the future, you'll remember that the fellow who lives in public housing just across the street here spoke to you once about your work and its meaning, a fellow who, on behalf of millions of your fellow Americans who never get the chance, wants to say to you today, we're mighty appreciative and mighty grateful to you and proud of you also. I want to underscore a point that I know the Attorney General has regularly made. You and your assistants are in large measure the Justice Department. Our job here in Washington is to support you, to give you the tools that you need to do your job. Now, I don't want to keep you too long, so let me just touch quickly on a few items of mutual interest. As you know, there was some speculation that this second term might turn out to be a caretaker presidency, a quiet time that saw little in the way of reform or action. And I just happen to think that the work you're doing is one bit of strong evidence to the contrary. For example, you're cutting deeply into the infrastructure of the mob, by prosecuting major crime bosses. You are not, as one longtime crusader against organized crime, Professor Robert Blakey of Notre Dame, said about past government prosecutions, quote, picking off the retired or wounded, unquote. In fact, organized crime convictions are running at a rate quadruple what they were in 1981. This means we're finally doing something about a black mark on our national history, one that's been there roughly since the turn of the century. And you know, I've heard some people wonder about the sudden appearance of the powerful new drug rings, but no one should really be surprised. In many ways, these new criminal syndicates are a result of our past failure to deal effectively with the older, organized crime rings who have attempted to corrupt so much of American life. The new groups see in these older syndicates their prototype, an example to emulate, an inspiration to follow. And that's why we have to act as promptly and as effectively as we can against the syndicates, old and new. I always steer away from questions about any kind of a personal legacy I'd like to leave America after 8 years in office. Answering questions like that sound a bit pompous, and right now, thank you very much, I think such thoughts are just a bit premature. But just this once, I'll break my rule, and I'll tell you. Some years ago, many of us in Hollywood saw organized crime at work when it attempted to infiltrate and corrupt unions there. Indeed, the union of which I later became president. And we've never forgotten. And believe me, there is nothing I'd like better than to be remembered as a president who did everything he could to bust up the syndicates and give the mobsters a permanent stay in the jailhouse, courtesy of the United States government. The American people feel just as strongly on this issue, a fact sometimes forgotten by too many in American politics. But if you look at the careers of Tom Dewey, Estes Kefauver, John and Robert Kennedy, and others in public life, I think you'll see evidence the American people have always cared deeply about this issue and approved of public officials who spoke and acted responsibly in dealing with it. So let me repeat what I said to you the last time we were together. We're in this thing to win. There will be no negotiated settlements, no détente with the mob. It's war to the end where we're concerned. Our goal is simple. We mean to cripple their organization, dry up their profits, and put their members behind bars where they belong. They've had a free run for too long a time in this country. And that's the end of quoting myself. One other thing. After due process has been done, after you're certain the defendant's rights have been protected and a fair trial has been held, should the jury return a guilty verdict and the court ask you for a sentencing recommendation, will you do me and the millions of Americans who are fed up with professional gangsters and career criminals, do us the favor of asking His Honor to throw the book at him? And while we're on the subject, let me bring up another area you have to deal with. Waste and fraud against the United States government, which has been an unrelenting national scandal. Well, now that we've reinvigorated the Inspector General's program, as well as instituted reforms that have uncovered items like $400 hammers, that scandal may be starting to relent, but only a bit. Believe me, we're still a long way from home. Frankly, I can think of few criminals more contemptible than those who for selfish ends would cheat our servicemen and women out of the best we can give them to defend America, or those who for personal gain would corrupt a social welfare program designed to benefit the less fortunate members of our society. So I encourage you to prosecute fraud against the government cases and seek severe penalties against those who seek to cheat the taxpayers by shortchanging the armed services or depriving the truly needy. You know, about that, let me just say one thing that maybe hasn't been called to your attention. These $400 hammers and expensive toilet covers and a few things like that, these have been portrayed generally as if our people and this administration is somehow responsible. Well, we are responsible for finding them. They've been going on for a long time. And every time they have come to public attention, it's because we brought them to public attention by digging them out and doing something about it. And we're going to keep on doing that. We'll take your help whenever we can get it. And finally, let me speak about another matter that comes up from time to time, and that's the selection of federal judges. I'm very proud of our record of finding highly qualified individuals who also adhere to a restrained and truly judicious view of the role of the courts, or the role of the courts under our Constitution. The independence of the courts from improper political influence is a sacred principle. It must always be guarded, and let me assure you it always will be guarded while this administration is in office. But as you know, the Founding Fathers knew that, like any other part of the government, the power of the judiciary could be abused. They never intended, for example, that the courts preempt legislative prerogatives or become vehicles for political action or social experimentation, or for coercing the populace into adopting anyone's personal view of utopia. So, to make sure the courts weren't misused in this way and did not set themselves up as an institution entirely removed from the society they're intended to serve, the Founding Fathers provided for checks and balances, one of which was to place the appointive power for the judiciary in the hands of those who are in office as a result of popular election. Now, during the past 2 presidential elections, I've made it clear to the American public that I felt the courts had sometimes gone too far in interfering with the constitutional prerogatives of other branches of government, even while they neglected their constitutional duty of protecting society from those who prey on the innocent. Well, this is still my belief. So I intend to go right on appointing highly qualified individuals of the highest personal integrity to the bench, individuals who understand the danger of short-circuiting the electoral process and disenfranchising the people through judicial activism. I want judges of the highest intellectual standing who harbor the deepest regard for the Constitution and its traditions, one of which is judicial restraint. So again, my thanks to each one of you, and please tell all of those working with you in your offices and in the investigative agencies how proud and grateful I am, and that is just an echo of how the people of this country feel about you and the way you serve. Thank you. Thank all of you. God bless you.
Okay. Can someone read the writing on the board for me, please? Anyone?
I'll read it if you don't mind.
Okay.
Following the election of Ronald Reagan, the doctrine of judicial restraint became inconvenient for conservatives. Now in charge of government, conservatives were no longer in opposition. Therefore, restraint did not fulfill movement conservative goals. With Reagan in the White House, conservative goals shifted from defense, halting and narrowing legalism's advancement to offensive, reversing legal liberalism, and setting precedents for a set of counter rights that appealed to conservatives. Once Reagan was able to appoint judges, overturning decisions such as Roe versus Wade and Engel versus Vital was thought to be within reach. However, it was first necessary to counter entrenched liberal legal doctrine by opening a space and ultimately securing acceptance for conservative legal theory among the legal elites.
Legal elites, yeah. Could you want to break that down, Richard, at all?
A doctrine of judicial restraint became inconvenient for conservatives, and the liberals tried to bringing something to, what is it? Halting and narrowing liberal legalism's advancement. So there's two clashes of political ideology, and this seems to point out the weaknesses of what Reagan brought in, overturning decisions such as once Reagan was able to appoint judges, overturning decisions, which is where someone else can probably explain it a lot better than me.
No, that was a good start. I mean, basically, thank you, Richard. Basically, this was the reason why I played this because it was a brief that Ronald Reagan, when he was in office in 1991, sort of spoke to some attorneys on the 21st of October. And basically, the point I wanted to bring out with this as well was that it was this that sparked and started up the Federalist Society in the first place. It was this particular brief that because he was speaking to attorneys there, and it was this that sort of started or implemented the start of the Federalist Society and how they became a large organisation. And when we come down to here, where it's got overturning decisions, especially like Roe versus Wade, we know what Roe versus Wade. Does anybody remember what Engel versus Vitale was about? We did that in the last presentation. Anybody remember what that was?
Debs, I'm not sure if it was regards to prayer in school. I know
that's right. That's it. That's it.
I wanted to mention as well that it was to do with being unconstitutional. I think Reagan was saying with regards to the First Amendment. Yeah,
that's right. It was. That's it. Thank you, Natalie. I'm going to go on to the next one now. Can someone read the next slide, please? Cedric, can you read the next slide, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that 1981?
Yes, that's it.
1981, President Reagan became president of the USA. Ronald Reagan made a speech at a briefing for US lawyers, October 1995, which opened up the way for the Federalist Society to promote their conservative ideas and provide the foot soldiers, the intellectual, legal, rational, and importantly, the medium where ideas and strategies are debated and stripped of their defects. Membership in the Federalist Society has simplified judicial selection for Republican administration by indicating conservative bona fides while also providing members a conservative career pipeline. This career track was established very early as the first generation of Federalist Society members graduated from law schools during President Reagan's first term.
Right, and that's quite understandable. So what do you get from that?
So it seems above my head at the moment. It's to
go the very first one. That's quite safe. Yeah.
It's talking about the speech that he made to US lawyers.
That's it. Yeah.
Which really opened up the way for the Federalist Society.
And promote their ideas.
Very conservative ideas.
Yeah.
The intellectual, legal, rational, and importantly, the medium where ideas and strategies are debated.
This is where their ideas were.
So yeah, when you bring your ideas, you know, when you bring your ideas forward, it's kind of looked at, checked at, and stripped if there's any kind of defects in them, and just looked over, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And this is why they used to have many sort of seminars. They still have them today, and it's basically where they can.
Sorry, still have what? Sorry.
They have their seminars. They
Yeah.
have their seminars. They have regular seminars where they all come and meet quite regularly and speak about the things they need to speak to, because what they're trying to do is influence, especially new people who come into the society, to make sure they're on all the same page. And so they talk about things, and maybe somebody doesn't understand that's I don't know, an important part of law, and so they talk it out and make sure that they come to the same conclusion that they want them to come to. So this is how, and this is why they have them there, because when they want, this is why, and it's the idea really of having these lawyers in these seminars is so that they can use them as well, so that they have the same ideas as the Federal Society, stand by those ideas before they put into government positions.
Right. Wow. Thanks, Debbie. That's made it very clear.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, do you want me to go back? Oh, I can remember to go back.
No,
Sorry,
that's fine.
Emma.
I was just going to clarify that but would you say before the Federalist Society, then it was harder for, say, President Reagan or people to appoint judges because they didn't know exactly what they believed, what their background was. But this is a real way of funneling the conservative judges so that they can say, well, we'll just pick Federalist Society ones because we know that they've been rigorously checked probably and that they're all on the same page. It's a screening process.
Yes, it is. And also because they wanted them to have, originalism. That's where it sort of came from, really. And they want them to have a good understanding of all the doctrine that they are trying to influence them about. They want to know that they understand what they stand for. And that's why they had the seminars. So anybody who didn't have who had that lack of understanding, they were very good in influencing them to ensure that they understood what they stood for before they were put in there. They didn't put anybody in these good positions unless they were members of the Federalist Society. Is that okay?
Yes, great.
Emma. Sorry, go on.
Sorry.
Go on, Cedri.
And so would you say it's like a form of indoctrination, or do they have to come with those ideas beforehand?
No,
and they enlarge upon it. They just indoctrinate them even more to be the way they think the conservatives think.
Yeah, they do. I think they actually start from when they're at university, because that's actually where it started from. And I think they sort of get them while they're still sort of on that learning curve, especially from a society, from the universities, and then they go join the Federalist Society to have more doctrine sort of, shown to them, given to them, so that they can, and that's why they have those seminars, is so that they can ask any queries, understand what originalism is, and all the other things that they need to understand. It's getting them geared up and ready, really, and prepared to put them in these positions. But they wouldn't, and anybody that they do refer to governmental positions, they don't, that if they do not come straight from university into this Federal Society, there's no way that they'll be given or pushed forward for a governmental position unless they know they're from the Federal Society, because they want them to have that doctrine before they go in there. And that's how they get, that's how they've got the judges there. They're all, most of them, 6 of them in particular, are members of this Federal Society, and and that's why they've managed to overturn this Roe versus Wade, because they had those in.
So they're all kind of speaking from the same page.
Exactly, and that's what they want them to do. That's how this is how they've become very, very powerful, because most of the people who come into those positions are from this Federal Society. It has really, really grown. And I would say that this is how they've been successful in pushing forward their agenda.
Debbie?
Yes, who's that, sorry?
Yes, if Cedri was done.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that you?
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I have a question about the Federalist Society. So from what you've described, I understand that they influence students in universities, or at least create a group where students can come together and discuss, we'll say, conservative ideas.
It actually started from the Conservatives.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, from the universities. Actually started from there. It's
Okay.
actually students who brought it together. But go on, sorry, Gertie.
So what specific role do they play with the judiciary? So you've laid a funnel, or you say a funnel between the society and the judiciary. Do they endorse these appointees or these candidates? What's the specific role that they play in this process?
Well, it still has to the role that when they're getting people in it, they still has to be elected by the people who are in wherever they are, whoever elects them. It still has to be done in the way that they normally do it. But I would say the reason why they've got a step up or an advantage is because most of the people they're having there are from this society.
Sorry, who has an advantage?
Sorry, the people who are there appointing. So in other words, if they're appointing judges and people like that, then people who are behind it, they still have to go through a vetting sort of process. And I would say that these people who do, the majority of people who are behind there are still members of this Federalist society. So they still have to be vetted in
Okay.
the same way.
Um,
That's what you mean.
So there's an alternative group that I had come across. It's called the American Constitution Society. It's a liberal version of this. I want to try to see if the Federalist Society do something untoward that liberal, similar liberal groups do. Do they do something different that liberal groups are not doing?
Well, I would say that the only thing that they've brought in different is their actual understanding of the Constitution. I would say that they've brought in originalism, haven't they? They've brought in originalism. That's the only thing I could think that they've brought in that's different. All the other things are perhaps maybe the same, but the way that they and the thing is they want to get an advantage in their agenda. They want to bring in those judges that understand this originalism, so that when they bring laws into effect, they're going to look at it through the originalism concept.
Yeah, I get that. I get that these two groups have different ideas of how to read the Constitution, and
Yeah.
I was just questioning if they like in trying to get judges in, they act more illegally, or it's just, they want judges in, the liberals want judges in, but does one group do something more suspiciously, I guess.
Yeah, they obviously the judges that they brought in are members of the Federalist Society. So what they will do is they'll have a sort of meeting or something, and they'll put forward this person, and they'll still go through the same process. So, but what I'm saying is behind the scenes, they are, because they're trying to get more Federalist Society people in to these positions. I think somehow they have a little bit of an advantage because they're from the society. So they're going to vote for the people that they put forward, but they still have to go through a vetting service. But I mean, I don't think that's illegal somehow. I think what they do is they already know who they want in, and they're adamant that person's going to get in, and they have a lot of the people that are there are Federalist Society people, and I don't think there's anything illegal, because I mean, if there's a vetting service there, then the other people have to vote them in as well. So
I get you.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's what I think it is. Okay, thank you. Can somebody read the next one on the next slide, please? Excuse me. Sorry, I can't see who's there. Charity, are you there? I think I remember seeing Charity in there. Or Magda, do you want to read the next slide, please?
I can read it, but someone else can break it down, maybe. The Federalist Society was central to the development of a fully matured conservative doctrine that could challenge legal liberalism and also provide a conservative understanding of law. Beyond the development of a coherent theory, these new conservative legal ideas had to gain acceptance with the legal community's intellectual elites before judges could reference these novel ideas in judicial opinions. Sorry.
Yeah. Mhm.
In general, any new theory in law must be vetted and accepted as legitimate by the profession's elites. In the legal realm, this was largely done through law schools and professional bar associations. Law schools are the most influential in shaping the culture of law through controlling the education process. Universities are the entryway into a legal career.
Yeah, so I think that answers some of the questions there. Do you want to break down just the first sentence, just the first paragraph? Excuse me. Or anybody else? Could they, Emma, do you want to break down the first one, or anybody else who's there and help Magda?
From what I understand, at least the first sentence
Yeah.
is saying is that just this Federalist Society provides a place for conservative doctrine to be understood when viewing the law as a challenge to seeing the law through a liberal lens.
Okay, and the next one.
And so beyond just this understanding or this theory of how to view the law, it had to gain acceptance within the higher legal intellectual elites before judges could reference what was understood in the Federalist Society in judicial opinions. So there's like, at least how it's depicted in this paragraph, there's three levels. There's the judges, and then there's the work done by intellectual think tanks that the judges reference, and then there's the Federalist Society. So the Federalist Society had to influence the intellectual think tanks who could be referenced by the judges when giving their opinions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to add to that? So in general, judicial opinions explain in various degrees of detail the principles and rationale used to reach their decision. So a court ruling that departs from established law in particular is expected to provide a justification for the decision. And here we're talking about where they want to bring in, well, they brought in originalism. Can somebody read the next slide? Emma, could you read this one, please?
Conservatives, once in charge of government power, intended to disestablish prevailing doctrine, disrupting existing law. Therefore, conservative justices needed a conservative constitutional rationale that could justify a sharp departure from the legal status quo to the legal establishment. These legal arguments were provided by the Federalist Society, providing conservative lawyers and judges with the necessary constitutional arguments to reach conservative decisions made by the network's most important function.
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe the network's most. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe.
Providing conservative lawyers and judges with the necessary constitutional arguments to reach conservative decisions may be the network's most important function. Okay. So they're changing the way they approach these cases. I'm not sure about the first sentence. The conservatives need a conservative constitution. They basically need some justification for interpreting law now in this very right-wing conservative, I'm using that conservative way that they haven't done before. So that it's links to the previous slide. They have to persuade the people that are already in power to accept that interpretation of law, and they need some good doctrinal arguments as to why they're doing that. I think these are doctrinal legal arguments. And these arguments were provided by the Federalist Society to meet those intellectual elites, I suppose, view of it, so that they can get away with passing these laws. Otherwise, who are they to come in and say, we're going to read the law this way, when everybody's been doing it a different way in the past?
That's right. That's it. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to add to that? The next one, Curtis, could you read the next one, please?
Yeah. Providing the intellectual language for Supreme Court opinions conceals much of the network's influence, which is not as readily apparent as changing a justice's vote in a court case. The Federalist Society relies on its members to do the work to influence government, judges, lawmakers, or in proposing doctrine. The Federalist Society itself is the conduit through which the necessary components for revolutionary change are developed. The Federalist Society enabled constitutional change through creating the ideas that underlay departures from established doctrine and creating the network that could reach into all areas of the legal and political establishment to legitimate and promulgate these new ideas until they were ultimately accepted.
Exactly.
So, from what I understand, the paragraph is saying is that the institutions in America are pretty strong. And so in order to change established law, this being the result of a backlash to those decades of liberal decisions that had been made in the courts, the Federalist Society, and wanting to reverse those, going back to your first slide about Ronald Reagan and etc., and wanting to reverse all that had been done, they needed good arguments to be able to do that. They couldn't just have justices or judges overturn everything without reasoning in their eyes, without good reasoning. And so the Federalist Society gives the judges arguments to be able to overturn certain cases or create ideas that underlay departures from what had been established, such as Roe v. Wade, and to offer some form of legitimacy to overturning it, you need, as I said at the beginning, a good argument to be able to do that. And that's what the Federalist Society provides in
Yes,
their
exactly.
eyes.
Well said. Thank you very much, Curtis. Anybody else want to add to that?
There's a question that just keeps coming to my mind as what makes them, why are they so successful, you know, in terms of their agenda, we'll say, because there's equivalent liberal groups that I would argue you work as hard in terms of at a university level of educating people as to reading the Constitution or thinking with a liberal worldview and wanting judges to use their arguments in their decisions. So it's just like, why are they so successful in influencing or changing worldviews or opinions and stuff? I guess that's
I would say obviously it started right, but I think it's because they start, if you see the previous slide, they've actually educated people from when they were in universities, and then they'd go from universities into the Federal Society to get trained to for them to understand how they want to understand their doctrine. But I would also say, and that they've been, and when they do recruit these new people in the Federal Society, they continue to have many sort of seminars, and they have them very, quite regularly, and they have to, they have to sort of, because they're members, they have to attend these things, and they have these debates quite often about policy, about law, whatever it is that they're discussing. They discuss it there and then, and that's how this is the platform that they use to really sort of influence them in the way that they want them to think. So from that position, when they've got these people well trained, so they understand the way that they want, they understand originalism, that's when they're put into these positions. And if you think about it, most of the judges that they've appointed are conservative mindsets, and they're actually six of them are all members of this Federal Society. So they've got 6 judges that are members of this Federal Society who support their doctrine and support the originalist point of, how they want to interpret the Constitution. So I would say that's how they've been successful. And it's to do with the work that they did before they get into these positions. Is that, does that help you, Curtis? Or was there something I missed?
It's going in, yeah.
Direction that you want. I don't know where else to add to that, but that's where I'm coming from. That's the only thing that I see that the Federalist Society are doing, and they're recruiting people from right from university, and they have to keep, you know, it's like really you've been taught certain beliefs that they want you to understand, and because that's the only way that they can get into that's the only way that they appoint those trainees into governmental positions, is when they've understood their doctrine fully, and that's the only way they can get in.
Charity has a hand. I'm not sure you
Oh,
can
sorry,
see.
I can't see it. So, Charity, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I was just thinking about something as well. I don't have like proper evidence for it, but I was just thinking, is it not also connected with how the society itself works with the conservative presidents that come to power, as
Yes.
opposed to how with the liberal presidents that come, I don't think I don't know if that happens, but I don't think they have a pool of judges that they take from when they're appointing the judges. But with the conservative presidents, most of them, they basically take the judges from the Federalist Society. I don't know.
I'm not really sure what your question is, sorry.
Oh, I'm not asking a question.
Oh,
I was
you're
just
right, you're sort of
suggesting.
making a statement then.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
suggesting that it could be that the presidents, the conservative presidents that come to power, like with the Ronald Reagans and all the other ones that come, they've been appointing judges from the Federalist Society. So
Yeah.
it sort of gives them power and
Yes.
more influence,
Yes,
as
it does.
opposed to how with the liberal presidents that come to power, they don't necessarily have like a society from which they take or appoint the judges from. I don't know if that
Well,
makes sense.
yeah, yeah, thank you. I know that Curtis was mentioning something like there was a thing for liberals. I haven't really looked into that. There's a society or some kind of thing that's going on with liberals. I don't know what if they work in the same sort of way as the Federal Society. I haven't looked into the Liberals and what they're doing. All I know is that the Federal Society have worked very hard in what they're doing, and that's why they're very successful and they are rising to power. And this is how these particular judges have gotten to power, because of this. And believe you me, they're going to make sure that the president who comes in will definitely be, have that same right-leaning sort of views that they have. They'll do it right until the end, and they'll keep doing it until they do get in power. And in fact, we're going to look at what the Federalist Society are up to when we come to the end of these slides, and you'll see how instrumental it's going to be and how powerful this society has become when you find out what they're up to behind the scenes. So we'll go deeper into that. Thank you. What's her name again? Charity. That's it. Does anybody else want to make a comment about this slide? If not, we'll move on. Can somebody read the next one? I don't know who's there who hasn't read. Could anybody just read the next one, please?
Okay, I'll read.
Thank you, Charity.
The network's reach meant members were positioned to take advantage of access points in the legal system. A brief submitted by a network member as litigator, an amicus submitted by a network member in support of a position, an opinion in a lower court written by a network member judge, or publishing in academic journals. Through these methods and others, the Federalist Society has been successful in shaping the substance of legal decisions.
Ah, so what do you understand about that now, Charity? What does that paragraph give to you? What understanding does it give to you?
Okay, so what I'm getting is that basically the Federalist Society had to find access points in which they could.
I think they need. She was supposed to turn down the radiator.
Sorry,
somebody's got their mic on. Can it be switched off, please? Sorry, go on, Charity. You can go on. Sorry.
Okay. So what I'm getting is that they were basically taking advantage of basically finding access points in which they could have more influence and push their agenda. And the different things that have been mentioned, where they have members that were positioned in basically strategic places in which they could have influence within the legal system.
Thank you. That's well put. Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to add to that? Oops. Can someone read the next one? Magda, if you kindly, or Cedri? I don't know who else is out there who would like to read.
Yeah, I'll read it.
Yes, thank you.
Many Supreme Court decisions now contain the language of the network. This is where their influence is most meaningful and where it affects US citizens. By limiting interpretation by text and time, the judge will not be applying anything outside the four corners of the written words, such as current norms, to the law.
Okay. What do you understand about that, or anybody else? Can they help Cedri break it down? Do you want to have a go, Cedri, or?
Okay, it says Miss. Okay, network. So the decisions that the Supreme Court make is in what their whole ideology is about, I think. And this also in turn affects the citizens of the United States. I don't understand this. By limiting interpretation by text and time.
So he's talking about the Constitution, I think there. So anything when they write a law, when they brought originalism in, then they've got to obviously put that into effect, and they can't come out of that. They can't come out of that or have any ideas any different than originalism. They have to stick to that. So they can't apply their own words, in other words, to it, which is why the reason why they did originalism in the first place, because they wanted judges to stick to this originalism, which means that they look back at what their forefathers wrote in the beginning and not applying their own interpretation to it.
Right, so they really got to stick to that.
Yeah, they've got to stick to that, yeah. And does anybody else want to add anything to this? No. Okay, can we have somebody read the next slide, please? Is anybody, I don't know who's there. Crispin or anybody else who's there? Do you want to read the next slide? Or Mercy, are you there?
Hi, Debbie. Can I read this, Melania?
I'm there. I can hardly see. I'm having a challenge with my glasses. Sorry.
Oh, you can't? Does anybody else want to read? Emma, sorry, can I ask you again?
I think Melania just unmuted it, and she was talking at the same time as.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what she. Yeah, I don't know what she said actually. Is she
Okay,
going to...
can I read?
Oh, yes. You are going to read. Sorry, Mercy, I didn't hear you properly.
No, it was Melania. She's talked with.
Oh, Melania. Oh, beg your pardon.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
In a majority of cases, this endorses a constitutional interpretation that is tied to the world of a new nation with a population of approximately 4 million people, confined to the eastern seaboard, and a worldview 300 years old. Furthermore, this also confines interpretation to what was, at the time, an untested and unique system of government. Also, when you look to public meaning, at the time the Constitution was written, the public, in quotes, was only understood to be a small segment of the population. Anglo-Saxon, male, owners of property, including land, slaves, and wives, educated and Protestant.
Right. Can you break down what that means, please, Melania?
All right, Debbie. I will just explain how I've understood it.
Yes,
yeah, from this paragraph, I can see that the author is now making a reflection of the Federalist Society, how they view this doctrine of pushing for conservative ideas, especially in the legal framework. So the author is looking at all these and having a reflection that this way of interpreting the Constitution, it's very much primitive. Like, is giving an example that it's like tying the world to a nation with just a few people, and it's taking the whole view to an old era, about 300 years old. So in other words, the author is saying this interpretation is not enough. It does not promote free thinking, and also it's also confining the interpretation of the law to a section of the population, not everyone. Because at this time when the Constitution was written, the public was understood to be just a small group of people, people who own something. Do you have land? Those who are rich, those who own slaves. How many wives do you have? Are you educated? What's your religious affiliation? Are you Protestant or what? So you see, this interpretation doesn't include everyone, but it is a targeted population. Therefore, it puts us in a position that it's so much limited.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, Melania. Thank you for that. Does anybody else want to add to that? If not, we'll move on. Right, Emma, can you read the next one for me, please?
Another one of the Federalist Society's core founding principles, that the state exists to preserve freedom, is as narrow as it is malleable, which means it's as narrow as it is changeable. Freedom generally revolves around property rights, economic freedom, and free markets. Further, by reordering priorities within the legal system to place a premium on individual liberty, traditional values, and the rule of law, the society simultaneously defines the content of individual liberty and traditional values by limiting judges to the public meaning in the framers' generation and allowing only historical sources in the time written for interpretation.
Can you break that down for me, please? Some good stuff in that one.
So one of the core founding principles of the Federalist Society is that the state exists to preserve freedom. And then it seems to say that how you interpret freedom is not solid. So you can interpret what freedom looks like in, it's quite open to interpretation. And then it says that the general definition of freedom is around property rights, economic freedom, and free markets. So it's talking about how freedom is normally applied. But they place importance, a premium on individual liberty, traditional values, and the rule of law. So they focus on those three areas. So they lift up individual liberty, going back to traditional values, and this rule of law. And it defines those by limiting the judges to when the Constitution uses the word public meaning, it goes back to when the Constitution was first written to interpret what public meaning means, which is obviously limited, as Melania just read the previous slide, which says that obviously a very different population back then than there is now, and allowing only historical sources in the time written for interpretation. So to back up the argument, they use sources that were written at the time the Constitution was, historical sources from the same time period, which are presumably equally limiting. And so
Go on, Emma, sorry.
No, that's all right. I was trying to summarize something. In essence, I suppose it repeats what the side before says. They go back to the original. It's originalism, isn't it? To
it is.
Get their definition of these things and base it on those traditional conservative viewpoint.
So what is the framers' generation?
In the framers' generation, when the time period when the people who wrote the Constitution lived, so the 1700s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thank you for that. So in the framers' generation, it was written as there was almost lack of clarity in the words of the document. So the Constitution reflects a vision and should grow as a nation grows. Okay, that's why the Constitution was written. That's how it should be looked at. So at the time, the framers understood that they were entrusting to future generations the responsibility to draw upon their intelligence, judgment, and experience to give concrete meaning to their broad principles over time, to these broad principles. So over 2 centuries, it is a constitution we are expounding, which should be expounding, and intending to endure for ages, to come to consequently to be adapted to the various crises of human affairs. So that's really how it should be looked at. So it's what they're saying. It's supposed to be a living constitution, but they want to bring it back in the past and all kinds of things. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Could somebody read the next slide, please? Natalie, could you mind reading the next one for me? We're nearly concluding this thing now.
Can't really see, I'll try. The Federalist Society also decides what is premium as it pertains to the rule of law. These interpretations and definitions of constitutional principles are extremely important when making legal decisions. However, while new originalism may be dominant, some conservative political and legal leaders still claim to stand for restraint. Perhaps this is because they have redefined what is considered activism. Indeed, there is evidence that justices affiliated with the Federalist Society have adopted redefined judicial restraint.
All right, do you want to break that down for us, please?
Nope. I'm not very good at reading and breaking it down. I think it's just talking about restraint, isn't it? The Federalist Society adopted restraint. Yeah, so they've redefined what activism is. I think that's what it's saying, and it's restraint on, the judicial restraint.
Okay. Does anybody else want to comment on this slide?
What about you? What do you think?
I was going to say we spoke about restraint and activism before, and I think what the younger people want to have, the younger generation that come up, they want to be activists, but they're saying they want to put restraint on. But because certain policies are in place, they're saying, no, we can't be activists now. So they sort of evaluating what it should be, and they want it to be considered restraint rather than activism. So this is what it's talking about. Okay. We're nearly concluding the presentation now. So if somebody can read the next slide for me. Curtis, can you read the next one for me, please?
Sorry, Debbie, can you just explain what restraint is?
It's holding, gosh, I did have it written down. Bear with me. So judicial restraint. Oops, bear with me, because we did it on the last slide. Right. Judicial restraint is a procedural or substantive approach to the exercise of judicial review. So, as a procedural doctrine, the principle of restraint urges judges to refrain from deciding legal issues, especially constitutional ones, unless the decision necessary to the resolution of a concrete dispute between adversary parties. So, as a procedural doctrine, the principle of restraint urges judges to restrain from deciding legal issues. Does that help?
No, I'm just thinking, isn't that what they're there for? To decide legal issues? I'm not quite sure. I think we did do this last time. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I can't. What the difference between that and activism is when they're actually deciding a case.
Right. Okay.
So you're saying that the up and coming judges are using activism, but the old school are using restraint.
No.
Or they're reinterpreting judicial restraint. What that looks
Yes,
like.
they
So
are because of originalism. And the new ones that are coming into play want to be activists, but they're saying because of their doctrine they can't use that, so it has to be restrained.
I think is it something about the judges aren't supposed to interpret law? They're supposed to enforce law or make judgments based on previous things, but not change. I think there's something around that. Sorry, I was trying to get the grips with it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll look deeper into it.
But they're now interpreting, and they shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Curtis, do you want to read the next one for me, please?
Yeah. Okay. Through the network, conservative and libertarian principles of constitutional interpretation made their way into Supreme Court opinions. By 2020, 6 Supreme Court justices were known members of the Federalist Society. That was not always the case. Additionally, legal change does not operate in a straight line from ideas to law. New legal ideas must first go through a process of legal vetting in order to gain acceptance and be deemed legitimate by those who are respected as legal authorities to be of use in judicial decisions. The legitimacy of the Supreme Court requires its opinions to be accepted as valid reasoning. This study emphasizes the importance of new ideas and how they move through the network to alter the trajectory of legal rights and legal remedies in our society through laws. Yeah, so just from what I understand is that conservative and libertarian ideas make their way to the Supreme Court by, first of all, by influencing judges, or should I say, giving judges a solid footing to make their decisions that sways the court. And then secondly, it's pointing out that the majority of justices that are on the Supreme Court now have once been part of the Federalist Society. So their worldview being shaped in the Federalist Society has just been transported into the Supreme Court. And the author is pointing out that it's not as if these ideas in the Federalist Society just immediately become law in the land. They have to go through a legal process or vetting in order to be accepted and then be implemented by the judiciary. And this process of vetting and etc. kind of gives legitimacy to the Supreme Court because it needs its opinions to be accepted as valid reasoning. They can't just make up stuff. I know it seems that way, but yeah, they can't appear to just make up stuff. And so the author is pointing out that looking at all of this shows how important it is for new ideas to go through this process and go through at least in this case, the Federalist Society, and then eventually change legal rights and remedies in our society through
law. That's it. Lovely. Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next slide. Does anybody else want to make a comment of that before we move on? So in summary, we can see that the Federal Society are pushing their way into government and are after the executive because they want to push their laws into acceptance. So even though they do not have the majority in the Senate, It will only be a matter of time when they do. This power, as we have seen taking place, has already overturned Roe versus Wade. Will it be a matter of time when same-sex marriage will be overturned too? We're going to look at what advocacy organisations are, because the Federalist Society acts as an advocacy towards other organisations. So we're going to look at what they are. So an advocacy organisation is a group that supports a political or social cause. They may recommend certain changes in government, public policy, society, and or law. So advocacy helps non-profits advance their mission, increase their funding sources, and solve community and society problems. Many non-profit organisations' missions address the needs, misfortunes, and inequities of individuals and communities, and even help individuals and communities aspire and dream for a better quality of life. So that's what advocacy organisation is, and that's what the Federalist Society act as. So the Federalist Society was founded on the principles of limited government, individual liberty, dual federalism, and originalism. So this here is a chart that I put together. It's just a chart. It's not a line or anything. And basically, it's just breaking down the Federalist Society and how they came about. So 1960s and 70s, original intention was being developed during this period. Then in 1971, a journal article written by Robert Bork, which laid the framework and groundwork to guide the development of a formal concept of originalism. And obviously in 1973, we have the Roe versus Wade case. In 1980s, original intention is introduced as the preferred method to interpret the Constitution. Then we have in 1981, Ronald Reagan comes and becomes president of the USA. And then in 1982, the Federalist Society was founded. In 1985, originalism is now openly expressed by conservatives, attacked the legal system of the Supreme Court. In 1986, the Lawyers Division was added, currently 90 lawyers chapters across the nation. In 1995, the Federalist Society created its practice groups to counter the literal bias of the ABA. So the ABA is the American Bar Association. So in 1999, the faculty division began connecting law professors interested in limited government. So that's the line that I drew out there. The next slide is talking about particular right-wing organizations that have started up in America. And basically, they all are focused on the family, Christian Coalition of America, American United, and so forth and so forth. And they are right-leaning Christian organizations which started in the years that I've put on the slide. And I'll go into more detail in what they are, especially this last one here, the World Congress of, oh dear, I don't know how you get this back now. I think I've overpressed it. How do I get that back now, Curtis? Sorry.
If you just press left on your keyboard.
Left here.
On your keyboard. On your
left.
Sorry.
Yeah, gosh. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that, everyone. So I've got to go back and share this again now, have I? Or was it on it?
If you just press the green like play from current slide.
Where am I?
So up.
Oh, you mean this current slide? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry, everyone. Thank you. So I'll just go to the next one. Sorry. So, so most of these organizations, which were on the previous slide that we just spoke of, are Christian-based organizations. They are all pro-life, anti-LGBTQ. They're against same-sex marriage, same-sex civil unions, and LGBTQ adoption, pornography, euthanasia, assisted suicide, embryonic research, stem cell research, and certain contraceptive methods. They believe that marriage is for a male and female only. They're against feminism, comprehensive sex education, secularism, and atheism. They're for traditional family values. Some are practicing law groups and advocacy groups. They are mostly conservative far-right religious groups, non-tax profit making that hold a substantial amount of revenue, millions. So the one particular group that I want to speak of is the WCF. Now, the WCF is the World Congress of Families, and they're one of the largest and most influential American organizations involved in anti-LGBTQ policies worldwide. So they started in 1977, and they've held conferences and events around the world. It has been the most influential in Russia than anywhere else. This particular group describes itself as an international network of pro-family organizations, scholars, leaders, and people of goodwill from more than 80 countries, it's probably more than that now, that seek to restore the natural family as a fundamental social unit and the seedbed of civil society. It has strong ties to the American Christian and conservative groups, high-level elected officials, including former President W.G. Bush and members of his administration, and they have supported and praised WCF's efforts. So WCF's stated mission is to spread American pro-family views, specifically in opposition to LGBTQ and women's rights, to other countries. Its staff members and representatives have established close links with Russian President Vladimir Putin and anti-LGBTQ extremists in Africa. This particular organization has actually been reported by the Human Rights Organization, and you can actually find a report on there that they detailed about them, and it was written in June 2015. And they give you quite a comprehensive report about why they don't like this organization. They spread their hate campaigns around countries. They've been very instrumental in influencing other countries to be pro-family, against LGBTQ, even though especially in the African continents, especially Kenya, Uganda, where they've spoken to presidents there and managed to get them to change their laws so they are pro-family and against LGBTQ, even though they know that these particular African countries, what they do, if they found out that they are gay, they're put into prison for 13 years, they could be murdered, they could even be killed, and all these things. And this particular organization are familiar and they know what these countries are doing. And they're praising these countries for doing what they're doing. So the WCF has also hosted dozens of regional meetings in the United States, Canada, Europe, Latin America, Asia, Africa, Australia and Africa, and has exerted a profound influence on anti-LGBTQ and anti-choice sentiment and legislation worldwide. So no other organization has such a visible and negative impact on LGBTQ rights internationally. So despite its international focus, the WCF staff and board of directors are all from the United States. This organization is in the United States, and it starts from the United States. When I particularly looked at this organization and why they're doing it, they've got lots of money, they've got lots, and the people who fund it are actually oligarchs, have been funding this particular organization, and also other conservative organizations have been helping them, and they've had lots of money. That's why they were able to go to these 80+ countries to indoctrinate and influence these countries against LGBTQ rights, as well as women's rights as well. And they've been very, very successful in doing it. And I sat there and I thought to myself, why is this group, why did they feel it was important to go international with their agenda? So I can only think that because obviously America is a superpower, is it their goal to get all the countries and indoctrinate them against these rights to come on their same page so that they can start influencing and be more powerful than as they are at the moment? So I was quite surprised, because this WCF organization is a non-governmental sort of organisation. And I wonder how they feel they've got the rights to sort of go to other countries and tell them this is what they feel they should be doing in their law. It's almost this Christian organisation mixed with this political, and it's almost like they feel they've got this political right to do that. They've had the go ahead from Bush saying that he's happy for them to do this. So I'm wondering why they feel they've got the right to do it. It hasn't stopped them, even though the Human Rights Organization has written about them and did this detailed report saying, do not listen to these people. They're forging ahead with this hate campaign. It hasn't stopped them. They're still doing this work today. So let's have a look and see who are some of the people who are behind this organization. One of them is a person called, what's his name now? What's his name? Don Fader. Now, Don Fader is the communications person behind WCF. And this particular person, even though he's American, he's actually an Orthodox Jew. And he works for and did a piece called Who's Afraid of the Religious Right? And he works for the Boston Herald. And he's an Orthodox Jew. And basically what he said, I'm going to read something that he's written here. He said, in his latest work, conservative columnist Don Fader of the Boston Herald examines the right of the so-called religious right in which he claims membership as an Orthodox Jew. In this volume, which is a combination of recent columns and new pertinent essays, Fader makes the case for the importance and legitimacy of religious voices in the national debate of issues. In examining the religious right, Fader explains the mostly Christian movement and its goals for America, which are nothing but the restoration of old-fashioned values and morality. As a Jewish man who is conservative and in agreement with conservative Christians on morality, he sets out what is wrong with the nation's institutions and what needs to be done to make things right. In doing so, he explores all the key moral issues of the day: abortion, gay rights, the culture war, family values, and the like. So, and he goes on to talk about these religious rights views, and which he agrees with, even though he's an Orthodox Jew. So we can see that this particular WCF is also familiar with the Federalist Society as well. They use the Federalist Society as an advocacy group. So we can see that even though they started in 1997, they really have pushed ahead with their agenda, so much so that most of the countries that they visited have changed their views on women's rights. They're all for pro-family, and they've been very instrumental in getting these laws put into these other countries, and that's why we see them today. So they're very, very destructive, these companies, and they are a religious company that both non-governmental, that sorts of using their religious doctrine as well as political somehow mixed together, and they've been very, very successful in doing it. So WCF describes itself as an alliance of Orthodox believers based on their commitment to Judeo-Christian values and the natural family. So I'm going to put a copy of this report for people who would like to read it, because it's very, very comprehensive. You're going to be so taken away by some of the things that are written in there that the Human Rights Organization have found out about them. It's really, really bad. And on that note, I just want to know if anybody wants to ask any questions before we end the study today. Anybody? Does anybody else have any questions at all?
Were they classed as a hate group?
Yes, they were by the there's a report that they've been classed as a
terrorist,
exporting hate, and so they have been reported on the Human Rights Foundation. They've been reported by them, but even though they have done a comprehensive report on them, it hasn't stopped other countries accepting them into their countries and listening to what they have. They've even been to England and spoken twice in 2010 and 2011. And so it just shows you how powerful these WCF, this particular country is. When you add up all the right-leaning religious organizations, about 29 of them, the total revenue comes to about 216 million. 216 million. So that's how they've been instrumental in pushing ahead their agenda. It's very, very bad. I mean, when you read the things that they've been saying in here, and you know, I could sit here and I could read lots and lots of things, but I think I'm going to put the actual document in the forum, and you can perhaps read it in your own time. Right, okay. Does anybody else have any questions about the WCF? Can they see how this is now all coming together and what the right is up to and how powerful it is? Yeah, does anybody want to query anything? If not, we'll end the.
Curtis had written something in the chat. I don't know if he wants.
Oh, sorry, I can't read what he says. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
that's all right. I just wanted to pick it up if he wants to. I don't know if he wants to leave it or not. I wonder if there's a compare and contrast we can do with this and how we see and understand Eden to Eden by saying we should interpret how humans should behave today and in the future, heaven and new earth, like how it was originally in Eden. Are we not being originalists? And then he's got kind of like a questioning face. Is that right or wrong? Is there an alternative way of thinking of Eden to Eden?
I don't know. Okay. That's something that we can ponder on, I think. Anybody else? Do you have anything else, Emma? Do you, you know, this WCF group, do you think that this is what's probably pushing the countries, what they're doing to get them all thinking on the same page and being wanting to keep America as the you know, more powerful country? Or what do you think? What do you think? Why, you know, I sat there and I'm thinking, you know, you've got this American organization. Why are they deciding now to go all abroad to do all this?
Why do they have to persuade the countries that are already believing all that anyway?
Yeah.
No, I'm asking you, Debs, because they're already.
Say that again.
These countries and their religious beliefs already are against all that anyway.
They're against LGBTQ.
What, sorry?
Did you say against LGBT? They're more pro-family.
Yeah, they're all pro-family and against LGBT and everything. You know, the biblical stance. So, what difference does WCF make?
Well, obviously they didn't think that because they wouldn't be visiting them, would they? So, what would be the idea of going to these other countries and talking to them about it anyway? I would say that they've got some other sort of agenda with it all. And what they have, I mean, if you think about it, they've got oligarchs supporting their cause. They've got people, and they've got very powerful people on their sides. I can't remember the names of the oligarchs, but they're people who are on Putin's board, and so they meet quite regularly, and so they've got a lot of influence in Russia. And you think to yourself, why are they picking this? I don't know if it's because they want them to become more powerful. They want to be this powerful voice to go around the world. They want to, make sure that it's from America. They want to people to embrace America and keep this superpower status. There's obviously a hidden agenda. I didn't look deeper into it. I thought to myself, why did they do it? And I'm thinking that's the only way I could think of. I don't know if you've got any other reasons.
I think you've mentioned them before. It's quite interesting how the laws were passed in Uganda, and I think you mentioned Uganda and Kenya.
Kenya. I don't
know how much that played a part. It seems they've got obviously an agenda to legislate into law, which is pushing. It seems by working together like this, like the Federalist Society, is like a confederacy that when they come together to do things and they've got a directed purpose, it comes into effect.
Yeah, and they did because when you read the report, you can read the effect that it did because they changed it. And there's a woman that was on their board in Uganda, I think, and what she did was she came against. There was a group that were against pro-family and all the, and they were for LGBT rights. And then she said that she reported them for being terrorists, and they got arrested simply because these WCF group came there and talked to them about it. So this is sort of made it. It's almost like it's cemented their beliefs. It's almost like they tried to have this political role, even though they're a non-governmental organisation. They had this political side of it that they were really forcing or wanting to have a deeper effect on, because why else would they bother visiting all these countries? It's not just a few countries. They've gone over 80 countries.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It is.
Not
So
any
on that,
chapter.
yeah, it is. So on that note, what I'll do is I'll end the presentation if nobody has any further questions, but I think that will give you food for thought about what really is going on and how these organisations, especially the religious organisations leading on the right, are really pushing their agenda, not only in America, but worldwide. So we'll end on that. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I thank you for participation in this study today, and we'll end with a prayer.
And thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Cedri. How do I get rid of this? Oh, yeah. So can people now pray, please, where they can? Dear Holy God, we thank you so much for the privilege that I could present my final presentation on the role of the society today. We thank you, Lord, for all those that participated, and we understood the things that we need to understand a bit more. So thank you, Lord. I know there's lots more things that are going that we still need to understand, but we're so thankful that you're giving us the lights that we can find all this information and provide the study today. Please be with each and every one of us now as we go on with our Sabbath school. And thank you once again, Lord, for this Sabbath day. For we give you thanks and praise in and through our beloved Saviour, always to your great honour and glory. Amen. Thank you.
Amen.